I was in the religious life for 7 years, and that type of life, you do a lot of reading, right? A lot of studying. So I've always had the uh, inclination to that, to study and read. And then when I came to the U.S., I couldn't do that right away because of the legal paperwork. So I was in the restaurant industry where I learned business, and I became a small business owner. Um, then when I stopped doing that, partly because of the 2007 crisis and other issues, um, and I became a resident of the U.S., I decided that the law was a good combination between my prior background, my now experience in businesses, to combine that intellectual part with that experience in business and be able to help the small businesses in their legal needs. That's kind of it.
Thanks. Yeah, well said. So, what is business litigation all about? Is receiving like a demand letter from an upset customer or supplier the same thing as getting sued, for example?
Well, business litigation is essentially it's a fight or a dispute between two businesses. There's a business on one side of the lawsuit and a business on the other side of the lawsuit, right? And usually the term litigation refers more specifically to when there's already a lawsuit filed. So a demand letter, technically it's not a lawsuit, it's just the threat of a lawsuit. But you can be sure that when there's a demand letter, there's likely a lawsuit, and you should, be contacting a lawyer about that demand letter, because if someone already pays someone to write a demand letter, chances are you're probably going to be sued. Or if you are the one sending the demand letter, chances are you're already in this process. So it's sort of the pre-lawsuit stage. And some type of cases demanded, meaning like by law, there has to be that letter, right? Usually it's a letter that comes because you don't want to be in front of a judge, and the judge and then you're suing somebody, and the judge will tell you, well, did you ask them before the lawsuit, right? So you want to show that letter, yeah, we had a demand. But sometimes it's required by the type of lawsuit, like for example civil theft lawsuit will require that you send a letter before even filing your legal
Interesting.
complaint.
Okay. And what I could say, at what point do you start working with a small business owner? Because it's a little delicate. Correct me if I'm wrong. The moment your lawyer is getting involved with a client, with a supplier, our clients that are our franchisees involved with the franchisor, that relationship could be soured, ruined. So how do you balance that? Are you behind the scenes in the beginning? Like if someone's wronged, a small business owner is wronged, how do you manage that?
Well, that's a great question, because we have, well, our clientele, they're small business owners, right? Businesses like a bakery, a small real estate firm, a dental practice, a shop, you name it. Businesses that are between 3 employees to 20 employees, right? That's the size of our clientele. And sometimes they ask us to negotiate contracts for them. And some others, they want to save that legal fee. But the situation is that it will depend on your lawyer to be able to negotiate a good contract with your supplier, and at the same time don't kill your transaction, right? But your lawyer could be a little bit intense, and maybe he's pulling all the terms towards your side, and that could kill your deal. And most business owners just don't want that, and that's partly the reason because why sometimes they try to skip the lawyer, because they go like the lawyer's gonna kill the transaction. But it's sort of like a necessary evil, because, for example, we've helped negotiate franchise agreements with big franchise firms, and these booklets, they're so one-sided, right,
Oh
towards the
yeah.
franchisor. And it is important that the franchisee does some negotiation and some pulling toward his side, because when there is a problem, especially if you're for example, you're a business in Florida. Florida law is extremely strict when it comes to contracts. So
Okay.
if you come with a booklet, that on page 97 says that you don't have a case, you don't have a case. The judge is going to enforce that. So you have to be
Yeah, we've
very
seen with
careful.
franchises where it's like the franchisee can't compete with the franchisor ever, and in the similar industry, but the territory is like not all that protected. So it's like the franchisor can compete directly with the franchisee, but the franchisee can't like do something outside the system. So we've seen that come in handy where the attorney, before they sign the franchise agreement, it's like, hey, this is a little one-sided. Let's clean this up.
Correct, and it's important to clean it up because you're gonna be held to that paper anyway. So you might as well negotiate some terms that are gonna, lower the damage from that one-sided agreement. And it's debatable where the franchisor can say, "Hey, you have no rights, I have all rights," and that contract itself might be held unconscionable. So it's so one-sided that the other side really got no benefit at all. But you don't want to be in a position that when
Sure.
you're litigating and you're in a case, that you're litigating the issue of unconscionability, which is a complicated legal issue, very fact-based. So you want to have your lawyer, again, not kill your deal, but do some tweaking to that agreement. And there are key areas that we can identify, right? It's not that we have to read the entire booklet. There are key components that you want to make sure say the right thing. To put an example, arbitration clauses, right? So do you want to, if something happens in your relationship with your franchisor or with your supplier, do you want to have to go to arbitration, or would you like to have access to the courts? Arbitration is expensive, and the world of arbitration is very pro corporation, pro the bigger guys. So that's why most corporations like arbitrations and most little businesses or people don't like arbitration. There's a reason for that. So simple things that we can ID quickly as business litigator lawyers that could help.
So yeah, for someone that's just starting a business, or maybe they're now in 3 years and they're making revenue of $500,000, million, and they're making enough money, and they're like, okay, I want to protect the house. What do it's like, say someone's clean slate, they've never had any litigation issues. Like, what are some of the mechanisms that you would look at, beyond going through their existing contracts with suppliers or customers, to really protect themselves and do some asset protection?
Yeah. No, if you have that example, somebody 3 years clean making good revenues, I mean, it's great, but I will tell you based on 10 years doing this, that it's just a matter of time. A matter of time until you get sued. As you get bigger, you'll get sued or you'll sue somebody. Right? It's going to happen in some direction. I mean, hopefully very far in the future, but I just, as you grow, it's just the nature of, businesses have humans behind, and humans, get into in misunderstandings and complications. So
And last time I was at your office, it's like crazy. Some of these people are really wronged. Hearing some of these stories of just like people being towed and just, someone has physical issues and their car is being towed, and it's just like, that's not right. And you got to stand up for yourself. And
yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is a lot of abuse, and the bigger abuses, the little. And if you are a small businesses, you want to have protections. I mean, one of the first ones we tell our clients based on actually litigating issues is the situation with compliance, right? You might not have a lawsuit today, you might be doing good revenues, but you want to have an attorney that will help you with complying with every aspect of that a business has to deal with. For example, whether it is your permitting, your business tax receipt, your the payment of taxes, labor law issues, all these little things. Your business has to be, by the book, because guess what? If you have a contract and the contract has a clause that says that, if you do something illegal, right, then we don't have to perform this contract. We've had defendants, big defendants, hang on this little $100 permit with the city to argue illegality. And there is hundreds of thousands of issues at stake, and try to kill your case because the contract says that you're not complying with a silly permit.
Oh,
Right?
wow. Yeah, because it's anything.
Because it could be anything, right? Because your contract has a clause that says, if you do something illegal, I don't have to.
And yeah, probably someone signing that, I would be naive enough. Okay, I'm not going to do something illegal, but then it's like,
Correct.
oh, maybe I could go 10 miles per hour over the speed limit, and that would be something illegal.
Yeah, that would be something illegal, right? And mind you, I mean, corporations, especially the bigger ones, if we're looking at franchisors, I mean, think of a McDonald's, think of Starbucks, think of the bigger franchise. They're not going to hire just about any lawyer. They're going to hire these bigger firms with a lot of resources and a lot of talented lawyers that will make the arguments because they're being paid for, and they will paint your speeding ticket as a speeding ticket that's a horrible violation of the law. To put an example, but the example we've seen more is like, think of those business tax receipts that you gotta pay to the county, which is just a silly fee, right?
Yeah, it's and like $50, $100 a year.
They will blow it out of proportion. They will blow it out of proportion and paint you as the most illegal business in the world, and they'll do it skillfully, and they will persuade a judge who'll be out of context. So you want to comply to avoid these things, because even if they don't defeat your case on this, guess what? You're going to be litigating this silly issue, and it's going to make the litigation so expensive that they're going to resource you, because they will be able to afford, a McDonald's will be able to afford millions in legal fees that
what's $500K, $1 million to McDonald's, a publicly traded company,
and de facto kills your case. So compliance is very important. Pay a lawyer, $1,000, $2,000. Go through my records. Tell me, what are the things that a business of my size should be having, and they'll do a short analysis. Compliance work, shouldn't be too expensive. You can talk to your lawyer and say, hey, listen, this is the budget I can spend in compliance. At least some budget, and they'll be able to tell you something.
So imagine like they've done their review with you, you've gone through the documents, maybe now they have to renegotiate with some of their customers or suppliers to have the contracts a little more equal, and to really avoid future litigation, God forbid something happen, and their house is set. What are some ways that still they could be running into litigation, and what are some of the most common things, even for those businesses that have a pretty sound house and everything's in order?
Well, I'm thinking of, depending on the type of business, right? A typical situation that can happen to you is someone slips and falls in your business, right? So that's something that you may be exposed to. And we recommend that all businesses have general liability policies, right? General liability policies are inexpensive. You could look at one for a small business for $1,000 per year, right? And you have some protection, because, how do you protect yourself against someone, if you own a shop and some people walk in, somebody's sleeping in the floor, and then, so how do you deal with that? So liability insurance, it's important. Because at least you want to avoid the lawsuit, especially.
So you have the contracts in order, then you supplement that with insurance, and
insurance.
After a set amount, then you're covered for pretty good. After probably the initial fee, maybe you have to pay out of pocket $1,000, $3,000, but after that, right? The settlement could be $200K, and you're not paying that. There'll
be a small deductible, but you can get an inexpensive $1 million general liability, depending on your business, right? If you run a real estate business where you have offices, you're gonna get it very cheap. If your business is more like a supermarket, things were more risk, maybe a little more expensive. But that's that is, a no-brainer. Businesses should have general liability policy. Most business owners, they're like financially, conscious, and they want to save, but this is something where you shouldn't save, because like I said, sometimes a lawsuit is a matter of time, and you might as well have that as a protection.
When do you, for the small business owners that you're really like the trusted advisor and not the ones that they have a friend of a friend that use you and they're calling you in the middle of the heat and it's like already pretty late in the process, but someone that you're working with on a monthly basis, like when do you really get involved and start advising them if, say, a customer owes them $50K, $100K, and they're not paying?
It's $50,000. You're already looking at lawsuit size type of situation.
Okay.
So a $50,000.
So someone owes you $5,000 in the state of Florida. Is it really worth pushing forward?
$5,000. We'll send a demand letter, and then what we'll do is we'll see if there is some way, maybe based on contract or on law, that we could recover the attorney's fees for our clients.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe we'll do a mixed risk deal with the client.
Okay.
Where they can. So essentially, to try to make it, we never want, as lawyers, to have the client pay $100 to recover $100.
Yeah.
So you have to provide value, right? So it's all about value. But yes, as the amount reaches $5,000, it becomes difficult. So you could go to small claims court, but they're difficult situations. Sometimes we tell the client, hey, listen, it's not worthwhile, and we have them decide, do you want to pursue this? Because there'll be some legal fees, but yeah, it's size matters in terms of those debts.
Yeah, and probably for someone you're working month to month with, they can't cut the client early. They're not a bank where don't let the client just have their bills stack up with you, right? Correct.
Or some businesses require bonds or deposits. If you have that situation, it's a matter of risk management. Yeah, you can in consultation with the lawyer, get a sense. We do have some clients that are like, we advise on a monthly basis, and we're like their sort of general counsel. We can tell him. We can also, we help businesses because we know this, and we are able to ID the profile of the client's business partner or supplier or what have you. We can always tell you also, even, hey, don't do more business with that entity.
Yeah.
We have databases where we can look at all their lawsuits, their credit ratings, past history, the owners.
Don't get started with the relationship.
Correct.
They have a track record of litigation. The principals went bankrupt 6 years ago.
Right. Some of our clients who do business worldwide, before they sign, these are clients who do export of agricultural products, for example.
Okay.
Right? Before they go, like, we want to sell to this customer, they run it by us, and there's a form that they fill, and we go like, we call it the due diligence. And we run these guys, okay, is these good people, who they are, and we give a recommendation. You go like, this is person that, especially for money laundering type of situations.
Oh yeah. So you have reputational risk, you have risk of not getting paid, and then bigger risk, you could be potentially involved with a criminal organization.
Because money laundering laws are very tough. So not only you don't have to launder money, but you can't do business with people that do that. If
you facilitate it. Yeah. With the Patriot Act, right?
Huh?
It's with the Patriot Act
the
at the federal level really brought that in.
So there's a list, there's the OFAC list, there's people that are listed. We have databases where we can look up, we even look the news. The databases gathers the news in Google, the news in newspapers about that entity you're about to do business with. So that's also important because, it will give you a profile. Someone's not paying you, or someone, they're a franchise. I bet that, they have franchise that have good reputations and bad reputations, right? There's everything
Yeah,
out
one of the
there.
nice things with franchises is they have to disclose litigation, prior bankruptcies, the principals. So that probably helps your search a little bit, but you should go one step further, all that. But that doesn't mean there actually are.
No, but it's not that simple, because when you have a franchise which is, franchise Corp X, what about the subsidiary? What about,
Exactly.
there's 10 related companies that are underneath, they're all the same, right? And technically they don't have to disclose all that. So we are able to look into this. We go to
So you see the whole web.
we see the web.
And you can see what sadly is pretty common in franchising, which has been the case with like Quiznos and some of these big brands, is they're getting cutbacks. They have a related entity that they supply the food at a big markup to the franchisees, where unless you have like a legal background, you're not going to be able to uncover
Correct.
that web.
It's really like a maze, and we're able to quickly, an hour research,
That's
figure
great.
things out. Sometimes, not every time. We're not, we don't know it all, but more often than not, we're able to give good advice to business owners as to, hey, this is a good business to do or not.
And then, so probably a big thing too, we have clients that are acquiring existing businesses here, usually through an asset purchase. But I imagine that's a due diligence that you could provide too. Like, okay, what's this business? Even the assets you're buying, are you inheriting some problems with this?
Correct, because at least in Florida, for example, you can put lien on things, not only on real estate. You can put liens on equipment. So you can. That's the first thing you got to look up. What is this equipment, has any type of liens? Whether it's a tax lien, because sometimes people pay their real estate taxes, but they don't pay their things taxes, right? The personal property taxes. So that's something to look up. A good in the case of purchases of assets, a very detailed description of what you're purchasing, the value, because then you are going to have to account for that, to pay your own taxes for that, right? So you want that to reflect that. And it is important we do all that review for our small businesses. And even if you're not buying the entity underneath this, and underneath that asset purchase, it's always good to know who was underneath, right? So a quick lookup will give you, okay, I'm not inheriting technically these companies' lawsuits, in the technical sense, but there is this bad history behind that they may go after you, even if it's by error, and then we have to dismiss that lawsuit because it has nothing to do with you. But you're already talking about hiring a lawyer to get rid of that.
Where it could be a position where it's like, well, I'm also looking at this business. Maybe I just don't move forward with this. And
so it's important to have consciousness of the litigation aspects.
Yeah, and I see a lot of attorneys where they might just do contract law, but they don't do litigation. And probably with that, they don't really know what happens in a practical situation where this does go to arbitration or this does go to court. And it's probably like playing chess at times, right? Especially when you're against these huge law firms and it's a huge, big franchisor or a big supplier that's going to try to squeeze you.
I agree because I feel personally that, having litigated business cases from beginning to end, all the way to jury trials, or bench trials with a judge, gives you a different insight into drafting that contract, into editing that contract, into negotiating terms in that contract you're about to sign. And in reality, it's like a continuum process, right? Where it begins with the contract, and then it continues with a demand, and then a lawsuit to a trial. So it's a process where the ability to know the entire road gives you insights into the beginning. So I would agree with that 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a nice, you can be basically the trusted advisor throughout the whole process, and the small business owner doesn't have to work with like 3 different law
Yeah,
firms.
that's also useful. Yeah.
What else is like important things for, we Visa franchise, we have a lot of investors coming from all over the world, many from Latin America, and obviously you speak Spanish, being from Peru. Um, but what are some other things that really a small business owner that's looking to start up a business, buy a business, or start a franchise should have in mind from day one?
There should be a clear understanding of, when you have your business plan and you plan on growth until X size, because everybody has a business plan, even if it's not, written. Most business owners know where they're heading, how many locations they want to have, etc. So it is important that the lawyer draws the legal plan that corresponds to that. For example, if you want to have 3 locations of a gelato store, right? So it's important that maybe you have your holding company, and then each store is put under one LLC. And then if you grow more and you happen to buy the real estate of the LLC, we do another LLC for that real estate, and we do leases intra companies, and we design the entire thing in a way that the business and the assets of the business are better protected. So, for example, if you have somebody that falls in gelato store number 3, that lawsuit doesn't spell to gelato store number 2 and 1 or
The
to the
corporate
holding.
center, they can't go after everything.
Correct. So
Okay.
there are proper ways to structure all this in a way that you isolate the damage, but it has to be done properly, because sometimes you just do it too superficially and you create legal entities here and there, and that protection is not strong enough. Now, when you do it properly, you're looking at cost, right? So, and that's usually a problem too, cost. So it's a cost benefit analysis. So if you're a little business, we're not going to ask you to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in
Yeah.
these legal structures, right? But you should do a proportionate, legal structuring of how your business is going to be, founded, and where you're heading. And we can create a system where you go like, okay, if you grow more, we'll create these other entities and intercompany contracts, and profit selling. I mean, sales arrangement between the companies and trusts, etc. Right? It's about asset protection in that sense. So that's what I would advise to answer your question.
And I had one final question, and I'll just set like a pretext for it. Like at Vetted Biz, we're all about transparency and helping our clients get good, reliable data so they can make the right business decision, purchase, starting a business, buying a franchise. And there's a lot more data now. And we find that there's more transparency in the market, and we're doing our best effort to bring a lot of this information on the franchise industry to light. And really, there's a lot of winners and losers, and people should know who the losers are, and they shouldn't be hidden. And there's just a lot more information out there. I'm curious to see how your field's going to change small business owners in terms of a legal side in the coming years with technology and more transparency and data. How is that going to affect like the legal field for these small business owners?
It's a fantastic question, and the field is changing. It's changing a lot, and you have, Legal Zoom or Rocket Lawyer, places where you can come in and do your own contract, or have like a lawyer on demand there that you pay a fee a month. So it's all good, but what we're experiencing is that it's 2 things. One, you're correct. There's more information, and that information is more readily available, whereas in the past the information wasn't that available. But at the same time, we're finding that business owners are so busy, and want someone to more properly navigate that maze of information, that they will actually, hire us to do that for them. Even though if they spend enough hours, they could probably sometimes certain things, the ones that are not so complex, they could also do that. And the second aspect is that business owners also want the service and the peace of mind of, because let's say, there's some things that can be figured out on your own. There's never that certainty that provide, the one that has done it 10, 20, 30 times, right? And that can give you that service with a competitive advantage. It's no different than, you being able to build a drywall in your own house by going to Home Depot, right, and hiring someone that will build it for you faster and cheaper. So the service aspect is becoming very important. We have great relationship with our clientele, and they really look forward to having that ear and access to us, and that sort of confidence that will guide him in the right direction, that they can trust that, and will give him the peace of mind so they can focus on, the business side only.
Yeah, focus on making money.
On making money, yeah.
And freeing up time.
Yeah.
Well, Eduardo, it was a pleasure to have you on. I really appreciate it. And I guess at the end note, someone's interested in your legal services, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Well, it's my pleasure to see you and talk to you. They can call my office at 305-570-2208. My website is www.lawayala.com, LAWAYALA.com. And you can also email me at Eduardo, like my first name, at ayalalawpa.com. And I'm pretty good responding any emails and or calls. So feel free to reach to me.
Cool. So I just added that to the comment box. Did I get the number right? 305-570-2208.
Yeah.
www.lawayala.com to connect with Eduardo, and then email eduardo@ayalalawpa.com.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks so much, and everyone, and hope you enjoyed today's live stream.